We're all owned by the syndicate, body and soul. Or should I just say body?
Hello, filthy movie lovers, something weirdos, and anti-criterion bros, to the 10th episode of the Sin Syndicate, the only podcast intimately familiar with William Rotsler's facial hair, and that knows a birthday party isn't complete without a Pat Barrington striptease. My name is Gentry Austin, writer and researcher, and I'm here with my co-host, adult film historian Casey Scott. And today we're going to be looking at The Girl with Hungry Eyes, one of the key early films from director William Rotsler. So let's just dive right into Rotsler. Let's talk about him getting his start in the business. I know he did a lot of still photography early on. Do you know what pictures he was working on before he started directing? I couldn't find any.
Yeah, so he started as a photographer apparently in the war, because he served in the war from 44 to 45. So like the tail end of the war, like a lot of these guys in sexploitation served in the army, and then he came back and went to art school and focused on sculpture.
Yeah.
And so he was really involved with sculpture for a while, and I think he was involved with some sculptures that were put up in front of like the LAPD headquarters in LA.
They're like metal sculptures, large metals.
Yes, yeah, like there's a lot of really good photos of them, and it's just like, gosh. So yeah, that's kind of the overwhelming thing before I continue, is just like there is so much creativity with Rotsler that in so many different areas that it's really just it can be very overwhelming. So like when you asked where do we start with Rotsler, I was like, I legitimately don't know, because like he did so much stuff. He was so prolific in so many different areas. It's crazy.
Yeah, true Renaissance man for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think he got back into photography after art school. It was like the late 50s, I believe. And so he started getting involved with photography, I think in like 58. But I think I have a quote from him, actually. He published a really good fanzine called Masque, Masque, from 48 to 65. And then eventually he came back with it through the 80s. And then there were some issues published by Bill Warren after he died, which have all these writings and diary entries and stuff of his, and they're all pretty easy to get online to download and read in PDF format. So I was just like looking through all of these things. But he had a quote that says, so he got divorced in 58. I started photographing naked ladies in 1960, but didn't really get going in that until 1962. Started an industrial film company, Green Tree Productions, in 1960 because I wanted to know how to make movies. So when he was doing the photography thing, he got involved with a photographer named André Didien, who did different photography, different kinds of photography, including nude photography and things like that. And then he kind of stumbled his way into doing stills on Nudie Cuties. Mm-hmm. I think the biggest one that he did that we know of is Kiss Me Quick.
Okay.
And so he got involved with Novak very early, like at the very beginning of Box Office International. And then he shot stills for like Notorious Daughter of Fanny Hill and a bunch of other films. The thing about it is we don't know all the films that he shot stills for because he's not always credited and he didn't always even remember.
Yeah.
So he became a go-to still photographer, and he seems like he was kind of self-taught, other than this kind of like apprenticeship with Didien. I should go back to that commercial company that he had, which he had for a few years, and he did like industrial films for major corporations like Mattel and Carnation and Lockheed, including animation. Like he was involved with assisting with animation too. Like he really kind of dipped his hand into everything he possibly could because he just wanted to create.
Yeah. That's funny you mentioned that, because you can, if you watch his films closely, you can sometimes see some of his like cartoons. I know in his that Like It Is, his hippie documentary, there's a scene where you can see one of his doodles in the corner, and it's animated. So it is early animate. Yeah. It's rudimentary animation.
Right. So he kind of, I mean, in that way, he kind of reminds me of a little bit of Roberta Findlay, just because he's like, well, I wanted to know how to make stuff. So I just got my hands dirty and did it, you know? And I think you've mentioned it a few times in this podcast of like, when you work in this industry, it's kind of like, well, you got to figure out how to do everything. And I think that was definitely Rotsler. Like, he worked with cinematographers, but eventually he started being his own cinematographer on a few things. And he editing, he taught himself how to edit too. Like, he was involved with a lot of editing. So yeah, he had his hand in every little thing in the industry. He also did in terms of not just stills, because the stills would be published in magazines, and he would also still do nude photography, which would be published in men's magazines like Playboy and all these other magazines at the time. He also was involved with with advertising. So he apparently helped Russ Meyer with the ad layouts for Faster Pussycat, which is interesting because then Girl with Hungry Eyes is very similar to Faster Pussycat. But yeah, so he really I think his throughway with shooting for the Nudie Cuties for like Pete Perry and for Harry Novak, he really connected with all these different people in the industry. I mean, you mentioned Like It Is, that's Chris Warfield. Yeah. And then he kept dealing with Chris Warfield. I mean, he was the still photographer for the adult movie Champagne for Breakfast in 1980. So he was still involved with like these people for the duration of his career. Like when he made connections, he really kind of stayed connected if he liked you and liked working with you.
That makes sense then. From what I read, a clip from his book, he's just like, well, I had all the tools. I knew how to do it. So I was like, I approached Harry Novak and just said, hey, why don't you let me direct a couple pictures? And Harry gave him whatever it was, $5,000 pocket change to...
I think it was it 10? Or maybe it was 5 and then eventually became 10. Very, very chump change. Yeah. But, you know, for someone making their first movie, it's kind of like, okay, how can I make this work so that I can say that I've made a movie and continue to keep making movies? And actually, for his first 2 films as director, Agony of Love and Girl with Hungry Eyes are actually really good. Yeah. Like, out the gate, shockingly good. You know, I mean, they're not perfect, but I love both of them, and they're very different from each other.
Yeah, even though they were shot not just like back to back, from what I understand.
Right, and they're just so different. And I think, I think he said years later that he discovered that Novak gave him the titles, and then because he was like, I can sell these titles, these are good titles, and he wrote the scripts based on those. And the titles, he intended for the one about lesbians to be Agony of Love, and then he intended the other one about the nymphomaniac to be Girl with Hungry Eyes, and that makes much more sense when you think about it. It's like, oh, actually, Pat Barrington in Agony of Love, she's the girl with the hungry eyes, so that makes way more sense. And the lesbianism angle and the fact that it's basically, you know, not a positive thing at the end of the film, Agony of Love makes sense.
Yeah.
So you got to give it to Novak. I guess Rotsler just kind of... I don't know why. I think that's a Novak thing. I think Novak changed his mind at the last minute and changed those titles. I don't think Rotsler did that because I just think that's really wild to me.
Yeah, when I was rewatching The Girl with Hungry Eyes, there is a line in there where she says something like "big love," and I had to listen. I'm like, did she say "big love" or agony of love? But it is, she says something about love. I was like, oh yeah, this is the one that was supposed to probably be Agony of Love. But it works. It works either way. The titles are fine.
Well, because Cathy Crowfoot is basically miserable the whole movie. She is in such a bad mood the whole movie. So yeah, the Agony of Love, she is in such pain from start to finish. She just seems like she's having just a real miserable time being in love with this young girl.
Kitty! Kitty! Come back, honey!
Yeah, so The Girl with Hungry Eyes stars Adele Rein and Cathy Crowfoot as a lesbian couple. let's talk about this relationship because it's an interesting depiction of, like you said, she's in agony a lot of time. But when I watched it, I always saw like she's supposed to kind of be the villain in this story a bit. Like she's kind of grooming Adele's character, who's kind of this young, naive girl who just got out of like some bad abusive relationships. But I don't know. I see it as like very sweet at times. Do you know what am I the only one?
No, I think, I think that's kind of why the ending is just like, oh Lord. Well, that's the typical for that audience. But yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying.
Like, because it shows her with these the looks on her face when Cathy Crowfoot's character, who's Tiger Cat, is her nickname,
right?
And Adele is Kitty. So yeah, Tiger Cat always has this like pained look on her face when she sees her like her girlfriend like run off with this guy and start making out in the brush. And it's like, it's not like it's a mix of anger and sadness, but it's mostly sadness. I don't know.
Yeah.
My name is Kitty Brayman. And this is, well, everybody calls her Tiger Cat.
Kitty and Tiger Cat, huh? My name is Tom McDaniels.
Oh, Tom Cat, huh? Tommy Cat, you're pretty cute, you know that? You want something to drink?
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because, like, at this point, this is something that I probably should look into more. And by the way, happy Pride Month. Is that, as we're talking about this very lesbian film, is that bisexuality doesn't really exist in these films. It's kind of like lesbianism, this kind of offshoots into lesbianism. We're kind of saying, well, that was like, it was a phase, and now I'm going back to men.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way that it goes with Kitty. But, you know, the possibility that she could be attracted to both is never entertained.
It's not
even though that could be a thing. Yeah. And so it's just kind of like, even the lesbian doesn't acknowledge that, well, sure, maybe she likes both. But she's with me. She just wants to have sex with a dude. Yeah. It really is just kind of, you know, for on the side of the road. Yeah, it's very interesting watching it with like 2025 eyes.
Yeah.
But I also try to look back and be like, well, from 1966 eyes, what would the audience take away from this?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just kind of like, well, she'll find the right guy. She'll find some lovable rogue, as Rotsler described himself, to like save her. Yeah. This relationship.
Yeah, so like we said, this was like a 2-picture deal with Novak, and this is the second one. And Rotsler said in his book, he's just like, yeah, I mean, Novak gave me pretty much free reign to do whatever I wanted. He just said, do something with lesbians. So I think that it's an interesting depiction of lesbians, especially when we get to the party scene near the end, which I would also like to see or hear the thoughts of actual lesbians to know what they think of this depiction, because it is kind of across the board. You have like a good variety, wouldn't you say? There's like the baby dykes in the corner. There's the butch dyke. There's Pat Barrington, who's, I assume, like a lipstick lesbian.
I don't know. Yeah. I guess. Yes, exactly. Right. I mean, it did remind me kind of like of Chained Girls, without the like clinical narration by Joel Holt. It's just kind of like, okay, as you can see, Tiger is friends with all kinds of women in this lesbian community of Los Angeles.
And Rotsler just lets it play out. He doesn't really comment on it. It's just like a scene with music, and everybody's kind of doing their thing. And you're led to just like make your own assumptions about these characters, which I like better than the heavy narration.
Right. And it's also interesting to like even note that at that time, I mean, that was something that lesbians and gay men had to do. They would have house parties. That was where they felt that they could be safe without being harassed by the police or, you know, other patrons or whatever. So yeah, house parties was where it's at, because that's where you could feel, you know, safe and secure. And do whatever you wanted, including like dancing topless and you know, getting into catfights or whatever, according to this film. And I feel like that's maybe kind of a lost thing with bars. I mean, house parties still happen, but they meant something different then, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, in this case, it's a birthday party.
Right. Yes. Which, I forget, how old is she supposed to be turning?
I don't think they say.
Remember.
But it's an interesting detail.
They don't discuss the age.
Where she's like, you know, kind of get this long sequence, which when I first saw it, I was just like, this is so dull. all we're doing is just watching her take a shower, and you hear her like inner thoughts. But when I rewatched it, you get a lot of character development in her inner monologue, where she mentions how, it's going to be my birthday today. We're having a party in a couple hours. And she says, I haven't had a birthday party in a long time.
Tiger shouldn't have hit him. He wasn't doing anything bad. Why didn't she help him after? She must have hurt him. Oh, I was a little drinky-drunky. A birthday party. I haven't had one in years. It'll be different than it was when I was a little girl. There will be others there.
It's like, this is a kind of you get more about her.
Those dudes weren't celebrating her birthday.
She's kind of a loner, and you see like kind of,
right.
I think the idea is that, Cathy Crowfoot's character, looking at it from modern lenses, maybe took advantage of this girl who's naive and who's clearly, I don't want to say mentally unwell, but she has some emotional problems. Mm-hmm. So did you read it like that as well? I don't want to say the word grooming, but I'm sure some people might.
But that is kind of what it is. I mean, that is kind of the danger of the danger of lesbians through like a 60s lens, is that like they can offer something to women that men can't. And that's why men have to come in and like stomp it out and remind women, well, you don't have this. And it's kind of like, I mean, sure. But will Bill Rotsler like kill a man for you? I don't think he will. So I would rather be with someone who would kill for me. Yeah. To be honest, I mean, that's love.
And so we learned, that Bill Rotsler, who acts in this film as well, was one of Kitty's ex-boyfriends. It's kind of vague, but it's like, she says that she was pregnant, but it's not clear if he was the father or if it was someone else. Did you catch that? She's like, I was pregnant, but he was out of town. So she took that as him running away from her when she needed him. And then Cathy Crowfoot's character swooped in and took advantage.
Right. But then also the question is, like, did Cathy Crowfoot like force her to get an abortion?
Yeah, they don't mention abortion.
Take care of her after. They don't mention that because that's a different
clearly
genre
what
of film.
happened. I think.
Right. And it's just kind of like, well, then how did they meet?
Yeah.
At the abortion clinic, did this lesbian prowl an abortion clinic to like pick up women that had to get rid of a baby because their man wasn't going to stand with them and take care of this kid.
Yeah. I wonder if they could even
that's very interesting.
Talk about abortion. 66? Trying to think of any
I mean, there are definitely, maybe not in major Hollywood films. Well, maybe.
We'll have to look into it.
But in exploitation films, sure. There were definitely, films discussing abortion by then. Not like, but they're usually like scare films where it was kind of like, if you're going to go do this, you're going to be you're going to potentially die at the hands of some butcher in an alley, which is very true until like Roe v. Wade came along and kind of made it safer for women to have abortions. Yeah.
Yeah, Rotsler's...
This is the political episode.
Yeah, so Rotsler positions himself as like kind of the savior character in this, wouldn't you say? The straight savior.
But it's interesting because his character wasn't even really that developed. According to him, when he submitted the film to Novak told him that both Agony of Love and Girl with Hungry Eyes were too short. So he shot additional footage for both. So for Agony of Love, he shot the sequences with the psychiatrist. And for Girl with Hungry Eyes, he shot like the whole sequence with
park scene,
her with Rotsler at the park, and then going home and have sex with him. That was all added. Like the whole sequence with like the Vaseline on the lens, that was all added. So it really makes him more of a bigger character. Instead, you just have her running back to this guy. Imagine if that sequence wasn't. It kind of adds development to his character too, and the fact that that's not just some random dude. It's someone that she was in a long-term relationship with.
Right.
Baby, he's just another stud, another Bob. You know what he wants.
Sure, I know. Maybe I want it too. Maybe it's time for a change. Come on, let's get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, without that sequence, I think his character would have come off much worse. actually, where it's just he has that one scene where he basically beats the shit out of Cathy Crowfoot. But we also were able to see him be affectionate and loving, and it's like, well, why did this relationship end? I think it had to be saved in post because the whole thing is post dubbed anyway. Yeah. So they really could have just added anything they wanted.
Yeah, that would have been weird if we didn't see that character until later when she. Yeah, so she's at the birthday party and catfight breaks out, and she basically bolts. She leaves her birthday party and then runs back to Rotsler's character, and then he basically defends her from Cathy Crowfoot, who just looking all over town for her. Which is a really funny scene because
I love that mad chase.
The scene is so funny because, from modern lens, it's like, dude, this scene wouldn't exist today because we would just call them or, ping them or look at their, where's her iPhone? But in this scene, it's like all day long, she's basically like looking at every gas station, bar where she might be. Yeah, it's like,
which is great. It just becomes a miraculous thing where she's like, oh, right, I need to go back to where her ex-boyfriend is, because that's the last place she's like, there's no way she would ever go back to this dude. Oh, wait. Yeah. I guess I should check because maybe she did. Yeah.
But you get tons of great footage of Cathy Crowfoot just like cruising around in that little Corvette.
Which is, I think, and that's his car, right?
Yeah, that's what Rotsler said. That was his car.
Yeah, that Rotsler's car. And I think it's in Agony of Love, too. Yeah. Because by that, that's interesting because, by that point, it's interesting to think about him having a Corvette, and then he had a house in LA, and then I think he had an apartment in New York at one point too. So he was making a lot of money from the photography, but then also the writing. Mm-hmm. So he wasn't even making that much money doing these movies. But, I think he made more money on the other stuff he wasn't doing that was related to the films that he wasn't making. Mm-hmm. So,
well, that's a good.
Yeah, this guy had this gorgeous catalog he could put in this movie.
Well, it's a good point because I always wondered. I'm like, he puts himself in his films where he's basically just like making out with girls, groping girls. It's like you always do wonder, like, how much of this was just like his like personal project to put himself in scenes with super hot girls. He clearly had.
Well, he admits that he admits he cast Pat Barrington in Agony of Love because he wanted to have sex with her. After the movie was done, like he says that in an interview, and he said, it's tough because she can't act, so he had to have her dubbed by Gloria Saunders, who is a professional, actress from she's like a Hollywood actress, and she's decided to slum to dub this role. And then I think he discusses like potentially like having sex with Adele Rein as well, which it must be said, considering Rotsler's history of dealing with a lot of fiction, writing a lot of fiction, but also creating different personas that he posed as in different publications, including books he wrote in Adam Film World and stuff like that. I take a lot of what he says about certain things with a grain of salt. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure I believe that he had sex with Adele Rein, who was married at the time and would soon be pregnant before at the time when she was shooting Common Law Cabin with Russ Meyer. So I don't know. I think he likes to spice things up because he's a good storyteller. Not to say that everything he says is false, but I think he's a raconteur. So whatever makes it sound better, he's going to go with that. And I love him for it. But I definitely am not going to believe every single story he has about every woman that he's had sex with. So,
which also, like,
it's a little much.
Watching his filmography as well, it coincides with the summer of '68. There are like heavy countercultural influences. I always wondered, like, did he consider himself part of that scene?
I think so, because I've read people discuss that he was very heavily into LSD use.
Okay.
And it makes that interesting to think about, like Mantis and Lace, where he has this use of LSD in that film that makes this woman go nuts and start stabbing people. And she has an aversion to bananas, so she sees bananas stuff. Yeah. And then Like It Is, which is very countercultural. And he did a lot of psychedelic stuff for Chris Warfield that became that. Yeah. And I think there's a sequence from I think some of the LSD stuff is stuff that he shot for Warfield that was then slipped into Mantis and Lace. So he definitely was involved with like the counterculture of that era, which for someone of his age, to be honest, because at that point, '68, he was 42 years old. So
really?
a little older than a lot of people. Like, for example, like that was around the same age as like Novak and Friedman and all these, and Cressy wasn't that old, but like a lot of older people that were not doing that. They were making these movies to
capitalize,
to give out, to kind of be involved with the sexual revolution, involved with the counterculture. They weren't actively a part of it. So he's very different in that way.
Watching.
But I think because he was involved with fan culture, he was always going to be interested in like in fringe culture and stuff that wasn't wasn't embraced by like the mainstream. Yeah. Because his stuff really wasn't very even like Star Trek. Like he loved Star Trek and that kind of stuff. He was friends with a lot of Star Trek writers. That show did not become a cult favorite until several years later. So he was in love with it while it was struggling to stay on the air. So I definitely involved with the counterculture.
Like It Is a very sympathetic portrayal. At least I saw it that way. It lets the interviewees just kind of talk just kind of speak their mind, and it's not like, doesn't come off as judgmental at all, especially around drug use as well. It's pretty like, it talks about the highs and lows of drug use. Like, sometimes it's the best thing ever. Sometimes it's not so great, and it takes some getting used to and experimenting.
Well, it almost feels like that's his response to Mantis and Lace, because Mantis and Lace he didn't write.
Right, I was going to say
script that Novak had. So I feel like It Is kind of like,
here's my real thoughts.
This is this exploitation movie. Here's my real thoughts on this, right? And I'll be able to use these visuals that I made, for Chris Warfield, and be able to tell this story. Yeah, so it's very interesting to watch those two together, and they came out the same year even. Yeah. So it's very interesting.
I'd also like to know like the history behind, the visuals of what we now know of, what we all call, like the classic, hippie psychedelia is like the kaleidoscopic visuals and the light show stuff. Like, what was some of the earliest, who were the earliest people to do that? Because what he's doing in Like It Is totally what people associate with hippie culture. But I don't know, was he an originator?
I always think of,
or was he
Well, I think he was definitely one of the people at the forefront. But I always think of Jerry Abrams, who was doing a lot of light shows for like rock groups at like the Fillmore in San Francisco. And then he started doing short films which involved a lot of the lights and a lot of that psychedelic things. He did a movie called, is it Acid Mantra, or was that somebody else? But he did films that kind of tapped into that psychedelia of that era. And so it's possible that Rotsler saw some of those, and I imagine he went to San Francisco too. I mean, that's, so I imagine he was familiar with that counterculture at the time too.
Yeah, maybe that's why I was thinking.
But I definitely think he's at the forefront.
San Francisco, because Like It Is shot around San Francisco. So I was like assuming that.
And he was still he did stills for like the Mitchell brothers and some other people in San Francisco. So he definitely was going to San Francisco. Champagne for Breakfast was shot in San Francisco. Yeah. So like there is that connection between the two major cities in the sex film industry in the 70s. I think even earlier in the 60s, I think he was going there, which actually kind of reminds me I'm just reminded. So like he did this book in 1973 called Contemporary Erotic Cinema.
Yes.
And so I was looking through it, and I was looking at his chapters on like sex films, and he has this long chapter on the West Coast scene. The East Coast scene is this. It's literally a page and
barely half.
An 8.
Yeah.
He has nothing to say about the East Coast.
Because he wasn't there.
He says New York is always... No. Well, he was just kind of like, they've always been behind on sex film production. California's been where it's at. And it's kind of like, well, not really. I think we've covered that on this podcast because we've been primarily in New York. I just think he didn't know. I think he became more familiar with it once he started doing Atom Film World and had stuff coming in from the East Coast that he could publish. But this book was at 73. He'd been publishing Atom Film Quarterly and then Atom Film World for several years by then. So he should know that New York had a sex film industry. I just don't think he liked it. I think that's the difference.
Yeah, that's funny.
Which is fair, because I hear that from a lot of West Coast filmmakers. It's kind of like, well, they didn't really have the girls we had. And that's kind of true. Yeah. I mean, And they shot mostly in black and white and not color, and so yeah, they're very different, but doesn't make one's better than the other.
Yeah, I could see the people out of Hollywood kind of like thumbing their nose a little bit at what they were doing in New York.
Totally. Yes, exactly. And he's even kind of nasty about San Francisco. He's like, well, San Francisco, like, the editing isn't that great, and like they're really more about, just making these pretty girls have sex on camera. They're not really interested in like actually making good films. I'm like, well, Rotsler has a point. I mean, because he was making good films, but there are good San Francisco films too. It's just really interesting to read his takes on sex films for starting in like 66 all the way until like late 89 is the latest that I can find that he was still writing for Atom Film World. And his tastes are really interesting to follow over the course of the history as sex goes into hardcore.
Yeah.
He has really good tastes. Like his three favorite adult films are Sex World, Misty Beethoven, and Night Dreams. Those are his three favorite adult films.
Night Dreams?
And
I'm not familiar with Night Dreams.
That's a man with taste. Oh, Night Dreams is the film that the Cafe Flesh filmmakers made first.
Oh, okay.
And it's so much better than Cafe Flesh. Any opportunity I have to tell people to see Night Dreams instead of Cafe Flesh, I highly suggest. It's so much better than Cafe Flesh, which I think is very overrated.
I want to see this one.
Well, talking about Rotsler's Hollywood talent, I was looking at that birthday party scene again because there's a lot of characters in it. Did you recognize any of the background characters besides Pat Barrington?
No, which is frustrating because the blonde looks familiar. Or like she's like a honey blonde or possibly like a light redhead. Uh-huh. She looks familiar, but I can't place her. I think we have another IMDb error of one of the actresses being credited. What was her name? Charlotte Stewart.
Yes.
So Charlotte Stewart was like a regular in Little House, like you mentioned, like in our notes. Little House. She was on Little House on the Prairie. She was in Eraserhead. At the time of the production of this movie, she was married to actor Tom Considine. So I don't see her slumming in a sex movie shot in Bill Rotsler's house. Mm-hmm. I mean, she was doing major, pretty substantial, not just even bit parts, like character roles on television at that time. So I don't see that being her.
Yeah, that makes sense.
These things happen on IMDb. And it doesn't look like her based on, shots I've seen from her from around that time. Mm-hmm. But nobody else I recognize, no.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering.
One other person I recognize, which is Oswald Fenwick, who is he is the abusive boyfriend. And he
you only see like the back of his head.
He was in Notorious Daughter. Yeah. I think you see like a side shot of his face, but yeah, briefly. But he was in Notorious Daughter of Fanny Hill with Rotsler. Okay. He was yeah, so he'd been around for a couple years.
Yeah.
So.
Let's talk about those. You mentioned Fanny Hill, those two films that he did with Friedman.
Yeah, he was in, I think he did two roles for movies that weren't his. One was Notorious Daughter of Fanny Hill, Romeo. And then he was in Romeo and Juliet, which was Novak, which was Pete Perry.
Yeah, so that must have been the connection. I gotta tell you, Pete Perry must have been their connection to the...
Because Pete Perry was so connected to Novak. Yeah, I mean, and they were involved with Kiss Me Quick, so he knew right off the bat Pete Perry from his very beginnings with the industry. So that makes sense. And it's interesting because he was kind of like, I'm not sure why I was casting that, because he usually would only appear in movies that he was either directing or photography or being a photographer. So that one's odd. And it's also especially odd because it's the only movie where he actually does full nudity and takes his clothes completely off. And I'm just like, and then that's all she wrote. We never see him do that again.
Yeah.
And I take special note of that because I've had a crush on Rotsler for years. So I was just like, I definitely remember this.
Yeah. Yeah, I watched his Suburban Pagans, and the other one is
Four Kinds of Love,
which they're basically like long orgy scenes. But now that you mention that,
he just keeps his pants
on, but his shirt does come off, and he does wear like this Hawaiian shirt that he keeps on all the time, but he eventually does take it off.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about.
Right. Yes, I do. Yes. But I can't, I forget, I need to revisit those, but I don't remember anything specific about those two movies. I just remember that they both had Kathy Thomas, who was like the short pixie-haired girl who was in Sisters in Leather and a few other things. I think Kathy Williams is in
Kathy Williams.
One or both of them, and she's amazing. But I remember those two being pretty interchangeable.
Yeah, they are. They're both shot in what I assume is his house with a lot of the same camera angles. Because he didn't move his furniture around, so it's all the same angles of his furniture, people sitting in his furniture making out and groping each other. But Kara Peters, I know she has a certain fandom.
Oh, that's right, I love Kara Peters.
She's in Suburban
I'm a
Pagans.
big Kara Peters fan. Okay, and she was Steve Vincent's girlfriend at the time, so they were in like Space Thing together, and I think Brand of Shame together.
Yeah.
So, and she has like drag queen eye makeup in a lot of her stuff. Like, she's very severe.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of her. So I guess I do need to rewatch Suburban Pagans, because I'm a big Kara Peters person.
Oh, and Marsha Jordan is in Suburban Pagans. So, yeah.
Marsha Jordan can do no wrong either. That's true. Okay.
But yeah, Four Kinds of Love is
I guess I'll plow through both of those.
Yeah, weird one. It's another kind of like free love. You can tell he's... That's why I asked about like how close was he to the scene, because it does kind of feel like he was in it, and he was just like, let's shoot some movies that are kind of softer versions of real life, maybe. Well,
it's very interesting because, he came from like a ranching family. He came back from the war, was involved with the art scene and everything, and then he got married, which didn't last long, but he had a daughter. And so throughout all of his time in the sex film industry, I believe he was single. So he was single, ready to mingle.
Yeah.
He was like a single swinger. So he was absolutely, happier than like a pig in shit. It was being surrounded by these beautiful girls, because why would you not be? But I remember, I think he might have had split custody of his daughter, possibly, because he had a daughter. I think there are a few actresses that work with him that remember that, like, there would be times where the daughter would be there and he would have to kind of steer her away from knowing exactly what Dad did. What she knew was that Dad was a science fiction writer and a cartoonist, and he had beautiful women all around because he was a handsome guy. And so, like, she graduated high school in 1972, I think. So that was around the time he stopped doing film.
Yeah,
which is weird timing. But
that might be important. Yeah, maybe he did make a intentional decision to step away from adult films. But
because he only did a few hardcores and then stopped. Yeah, and then I think he just stuck to publishing and writing. After that, he was kind of done.
Yeah. Well, let's briefly touch on that. The one that's listed on like IMDb is one adult film. She did what she wanted. What are your thoughts?
Great. Love she did what he wanted. Love she did what he wanted. I do. I really do. With Sandy Dempsey, I mean, it's this total asshole that like is trying to take advantage of women trying to quit smoking, which is crazy. Something Weird released it as Psychedelic Sex Freak. I have no idea why. I think that might have been just a reissue title on the can they found. And I think that version's cut too. But he also did a really good movie with Susan Westcott called Midnight Hard or Wet Lips, which is really good. And then he did a few others that are lost. So after Novak, he got involved with Shan Sales, who I think we talked about previously, who ran the Continental Theaters chain. So he had a company called Signature Films, and Signature Films, they did a lot of the surviving stuff is the gay stuff, which he did with like Tom DeSimone. He did Song of the Loon, which in a weird coincidence, Song of the Loon was published by Greenleaf Publishers, which was a publishing company that Rotsler did artwork for and was run by this guy, Earl Kemp, that Rotsler was very close to. So it's like a 6 degrees separation of Rotsler from so many different things in this industry. But he did, I think those are all done for Signature Films. And that's where the names like Clay McCord and Philip and Meryl Dakota, all the pseudonyms came from. And then in Adam Film World, he would like interview Clay McCord and interview Meryl Dakota. And then in his book, he has a chapter like Interview with Meryl Dakota. And it's just like, he just makes up whatever he wants to about shooting these films. Yeah, I talked to my brother Phil, and like he was getting sucked by this girl on the set or whatever, and it's just like.
So in his book, he's still trying to keep up the facade that he's not these characters. Okay, correct. Is he being funny, or do you think he's really trying to hide?
It definitely has like a tongue-in-cheek approach to it, but anybody reading it is never going to know that that's who he is. It's only when he's in later years he took credit for these films and named what they were. Then we could piece together. Oh, so that was Bill Rotsler. But then it kind of gets more curious because he mentions, actually, there was a quote that made me really take pause, which is that, so he says, in 1970, I was offered a deal with two friends to produce 2-hour shows, 2-hour shows, meaning like, I think 2-hour shows, by a guy with a theater chain who needed steady product. So that's Shan Sales. We converted one of his theaters into a stage, but by then, after we'd shot 581 minutes of finished film, we realized we were being screwed and quit. So... And someone has updated IMDb to say that Godson, Rotsler's movie, was shot by Jackie Coogan Jr. as Philip Dakota.
Okay.
So I don't know how involved Jackie Coogan Jr. was with these films, because he got involved with like some major like 3D visual effects and stuff later in the film industry. But it's possible that he might have been one of the Dakota brothers, Jackie Coogan, and then it wasn't completely a Rotsler fabrication. Yeah. I haven't reached out to Jackie Coogan. I don't know how receptive he'd be to talking about this. There's a lot of different Nepo babies involved with signature films, actually. There's another one who's still around who was involved with the gay films. So yeah, I mean, the thing about Rotsler, as I was researching stuff for this, to discuss this with you, was just like, I can't believe there hasn't been a book written about him yet. There's just so much stuff to cover. And I feel like I've only just scratched the surface because there's just so much more to know.
Yeah. It should be noted he has, the family estate seems to be sort of keeping his name alive. They're trying to, and they're not shy. A lot of times they're kind of shy. Those estates sometimes don't want to talk about, an artist that might have done erotic films or erotic art, but they've kind of embraced it. It's just part of his story, which I thought was kind of nice.
Oh, actually, the twist to that is that I found that I believe that the Rotsler estate is Paul Turner. It's not the daughter, I don't believe. There's no mention really of the daughter.
Yeah.
Or apparently he had a son too.
Yeah, I shouldn't say family.
It's not really discussed that much. Yeah, it's Paul Turner. So Paul Turner was the still photographer on these two movies, Agony of Love. Oh no, he was the sound recordist on both movies, which is crazy because it's all dubbed. So I don't know what the hell that means. But he was involved with him, and they lived together for a long time. He married Naola Graff, who was very close to Rotsler, and a.k.a. Malta, who was in like Straight of a Thousand Pleasures and The Godson and things. So she married Paul Turner. And it was while living with Paul Turner, after getting radiation therapy for throat cancer, he died in the home they shared. He and Paul Turner were still living together. So I think Paul is the one who was keeping all of this alive. He died in 2019. So that's why there haven't really been any updates on the official Rotsler website since I think 2015. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I wonder if he did officially
I'd love to know more.
Sign anything that gave his property over to Turner. Or if it was just
his papers, the Rotsler papers. There's a large collection that was submitted to the University of California, Riverside, but all of that is the science fiction and the cartoons and the fanzines that he did. There's apparently nothing that I could find in the finding aid about the sex stuff. Mm-hmm. It wasn't something that was submitted or saved, so I don't know if that was tossed. He openly discussed it, and it wasn't something that he shied away from talking about.
He wrote...
Even in his later years.
He was a critic, and he wrote extensively about his time in the industry, so
Right. And used his real name on everything. Yeah. And that's kind of an interesting thing, too, to note, is that his work in sex films didn't impede any developments he had as a writer or an artist in the science fiction world or the literary world. Like, it made no difference. Yeah. I think it might have also helped that a lot of this stuff wasn't available to see on video. So it's kind of like, I made these nudie movies, whatever. And he could talk about them and think, well, nobody was going to see them. But then something weird started unearthing them. And I think they sent him copies of his stuff, which he hadn't seen in
Yeah.
40 years.
See it in the theater or, you don't see it again for 40 years, right?
Right. Well, I think he even said, like, he didn't ever expect to see Agony of Love or Hungry Eyes because they're black and white. So he knew they weren't going to have any second life on home video because nobody cared about black and white films. Mm-hmm. And probably same thing for Suburban Pagans and Four Kinds of Love. They're black and white, so who cares? They're not going to have any kind of life on video. I'm glad that he was able to see these things and before he passed away. I don't think anything surfaced of his that's lost since he passed away, but I don't know if anyone's actually actively looking. Like, I'd love to see Shannon's Women. That one's lost because he stars in that as like a movie director. So basically playing himself as Shannon Karse.
Yeah.
Now I would love to see that. And I think there's a few other ones.
Well, yeah, you mentioned, his...
I don't know if anyone's actively looking.
Work consecutively as a science fiction writer. The fun thing about The Godson is that Harlan Ellison is in that movie. Everybody knows. I mean, right. Harlan Ellison's a huge name in science fiction. And you see him, from the back. I think Harlan was like, okay, I know what kind of movie this is, so I'm not going to put my face out there, but I am going to sit in this chair and get, straddled by this woman. And it is shot at Harlan's house, too. Yes,
right. And so it is just kind of like he maintained these connections with the fan world and with the sci-fi world as he was doing these films. It wasn't something that he kept them two completely separate entities of his life. And I mean, he was friends with major people. If you read his old issues of Mask that he reissued, he had contributions from Ray Bradbury and Robert Bloch. Major people. So he was friends with all the people that mattered in this world, and they all always said really good stuff about him. And honestly, he stayed in touch with so many people from the sex film part of his world well into the 80s and 90s. He was maintaining correspondences with Neil deGrasse and Ushi and a few other, and several other people all the way up until his death. He maintained very close friendships with these people. Yeah. It wasn't just about making these movies, getting them naked in front of his camera and sending them home. He maintained very strong connections with these people. That's
cool. Yeah, that's good to hear. Yeah, The Godson's fun when you see that Harlan Ellison's house because you can see all his books lined up and all his records. He's got so much stuff. It's really cool. It's a cool time capsule for sure.
It's a really good snapshot. Yes, exactly. It's a really fun snapshot.
Oh my God. We could talk about Rotsler forever. Like Casey said, someone needs to write a book about him.
And not even cover everything I want to cover because there's I have so many notes. I have all the Hugo Awards that he was nominated and won for.
But I want to talk about Cathy.
He did movie tie-in paperbacks. He did Grease 2, Arachnophobia, Vice Squad, The Goonies. He wrote all these movie tie-in paperbacks. I know I had the Arachnophobia one as a kid, and that was before I even knew who he was. So,
did those have his real name on it?
Yeah, you're right. We did. Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure if he used a different name.
He wrote all these under his. He wrote some under different names, but I think that was under his real name.
Okay.
I don't have it anymore. It's gone. But
so Cathy.
Brian was no better than the rest. He hurt you too. He used you.
But he loved me and...
Some big love. First time you needed help, he ran.
But he didn't know I was pregnant. He was out of town and he didn't know.
I'm the one that really loves you and I'm the one that always helps me. Remember all our plans together? Remember the birthday party we're going to have for you?
Yes.
Come on, baby, let's go back. Let's go home. Come on.
All right.
Miss Crowfoot, her real name, by the way.
Yeah, co-star in this movie is Cathy Crowfoot, who I'm trying to remember the timeline of her filmography. This is kind of near the end, wasn't it? She did some early nudie cutie stuff.
She was eventually moving behind the camera.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Cathy Crowfoot kind of started out doing some nudie stuff. She did that Mermaids film. I think she was in a relationship with John Lamb. Have you heard that as well? Who's a producer?
I've heard that, but then I've also heard she was in a relationship with Lenore Beeler as well.
Okay.
And then he's much more involved with her directorial career.
But like you said, that is her real surname. Jack Hill, who she worked with on Alex's favorite movie, Mondo Keyhole.
Oh, Mondo Keyhole, which I still haven't seen, and which also has Adele Rein in it.
Yeah, he said that was her real name, so he confirmed that as well.
Yeah. They must have had the same agent, I'm guessing. Adele Rein and Cathy Crowfoot. It's just too strange for them to both appear in two. Didn't they have? Wasn't there another film they both appeared in? I don't remember now.
Well, was Adele in?
Because she didn't do that many movies. Yeah. Oh, they're both in Street of a Thousand.
Yeah, I was going to say
Pleasures.
Adele was in Street of a Thousand
which is years
everybody
later.
was in that movie.
Right.
Every single
right, but that just goes to show
actors.
too. That was years after Girl with Hungry Eyes, and he had both of the stars in that movie. That just goes to show he maintained friendships with these people.
Yeah, I think Street of a Thousand. He had a lot of that footage. He was just like shooting that all the time at his house, and then he eventually kind of cut it together into that 72 movie. So who knows what when that was shot? Some of that footage was shot.
Yeah. And that was distributed by Chris Warfield. I have no idea how Novak got a hold of it. He might have purchased it from Warfield, but that was another thing. There was another Warfield.
So back to Cathy. Where do you start with Cathy? Mm-hmm. She's kind of a mysterious figure.
Well, she was she started early too. She started in the early 60s. What is the one she's in? Is it Wonderful World of Girls? She's in like these nudie cuties before she becomes more severe and stuff like this. Like she was able to make the transition into the kind of the darker stuff of the mid to late 60s. But I'm really interested in her because she was one of the first actresses, maybe the first actress to become a director. And it ties into Rotsler again, because Rotsler was making these films for Signature Films, which was Shan Sales. Also working for Shan Sales was Monroe Beeler. And Monroe Beeler, who I believe was straight. I've heard conflicting things that he was straight and then he's gay. He left children when he died. So at some point he was with a woman. Okay, yeah. But he was in charge of the Park Theater, I believe. He was involved with the Park Theater with this guy Ed Kazin, and so they did these amateur gay film festivals where Cathy submitted 2 films. She submitted one film called Brutal Seduction, and then she did another film called The Stripper, which was a drag performer performing a burlesque number. So it was like a takeoff on stripping nudie cuties featuring a drag queen, and she won $300 for that. So for one of her first short films she made, she won a prize for it. So then she began producing movies with Monroe that came out through Signature. They eventually later were reissued by Jaguar, I think. So she did The Boy with the Hungry Eyes, coincidentally titled Boy with the Hungry Eyes, which Monroe directed and she photographed. And then they did another movie called Time It Was, which was, I think, like another counterculture kind of thing. And that was another one that she photographed. She eventually directed a movie called Last Tango in Hollywood, which is not what you think it is. It's not. I wish it was a takeoff on Last Tango in Paris, but it was a gay porn movie because that was the market. That was a market in an industry that she had become familiar with, and she understood how to market and make products for that. Even specifically for those theaters in LA that had gay clientele.
And that movie deals with the Vietnam War too, doesn't it? It's very topical.
Yeah, it is. It's basically about a couple that are torn apart by the Vietnam War. One of them goes off to war. He's raped by a sergeant, and then the other one stays and has to turn tricks to make money, or else he'll get kicked out of their home. And I don't recall it having a happy ending. I don't think. I have to revisit it. I just watched it a year and a half ago, I think. I remember being very good. But
like production-wise,
I don't know what else.
Looks nice.
Production-wise, good. Looks good. It's well shot, and the story's good. So yeah, she didn't really. From what I can tell, she didn't really become that much more prolific in terms of film. I think she kind of left it behind. The trail kind of ends after that. I don't think she stayed with Monroe for that much longer.
Maybe that was her connection to this industry, and when they broke up.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like. The only other example I can think of that is like Alex de Renzi's wife, Catherine Reed, started directing gay porn after they broke up. But that was a trajectory where she became a director after they broke up, not during. But I think Cathy Crowfoot's still around, I believe. I think somebody found her on Facebook, and it looks like she might have become incredibly conservative.
Okay.
In her old age. So I think people are afraid to reach out to her to discuss the sex film she made. Because her current political mindset might not want to discuss the fact that she was in Girl with the Hungry Eyes playing lesbian or making films for gay men.
Or playing a dominatrix
That's my drift.
in Mondo Keyhole, yeah.
Mondo Keyhole, yes. See, when that Blu-ray comes out, I can finally watch it because I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what an upgrade that Blu-ray is because the current DVD is fine, but it's a little fuzzy at times.
Right.
But yeah, if you want to see Cathy...
Right, that was John Lamb.
Yeah, John Lamb and Jack Hill. Yeah, that's definitely her shining moment. She's not in the film a ton, but she makes like a huge impact. And
she might have been with John Lamb much earlier than that, too. Because wasn't she in like Mermaids of Tiburon?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And the raw ones? Those are like very early. And those are both John Lamb.
Yeah.
Right. So those are both very early. Fun. So I feel like with Lamb might have ended like 66, 67 maybe.
Yeah. They're fun to watch because it's like naturalist Cathy Crowfoot before, like you said, she becomes like very severe in her presentation, her physical presentation, which it sounds like
Colleen Brennan in The Touchables versus Colleen Brennan in She Freak. Very different Colleen Brennans, yes. Or Claire Brennans. I'm sorry, I'm in Colleen Brennan mode.
Yeah, so yeah, like in the Mermaid film and Raw Ones, they're like, and I mean, Mermaids is not a nudist camp film. Raw Ones is. But, you know, she doesn't have like the heavy like eyeliner or heavy makeup at all. So she's almost kind of hard to recognize, but she has a very distinct nose.
I bet.
You know, so you can kind of spot her.
Yes, she really does. Her profile is pretty distinctive. And also she has a very, very distinctive, like, cheeks, I think. Yeah, she's a very distinctive countenance, I think is how I would put it. You could probably tell her pretty distinctively. Isn't Diane Weber in Mermaids of Tiburon as well?
Yes, she's kind of the main mermaid, I think.
And that's the first person that Rotsler ever photographed nude.
Yep, I remember seeing
professionally.
That quote,
was Diane Weber. Yeah, and that was around the time I think that was made.
Yeah, so another 6 degree of connection
Everything
to
is
Rotsler.
Connected. Yeah,
but
everything is connected.
The Cathy Crowfoot thing is, you know, seeing her career trajectory and seeing some of the stories of her as a real person. And you saying that she turned conservative is interesting because it does sound like she was kind of a wild child for a bit there.
Yeah, I mean, I think she really was kind of moving in very interesting directions that no other actors at that time was doing.
Yeah.
Come back, you bitch! Wait till I get you home. I'll teach you. Kitty? Kitty!
Oh, you know, I'm just reminded. I don't know if this is an accurate credit or not.
Which one?
There was a film called Mother Knows Best, which was a movie where it's actually pretty twisted. But she made Last Tango in Hollywood under the name Boris Lashensky.
Okay.
And the only other credit for Boris Lashensky is shooting this movie called Mother Knows Best, where the whole movie is about Candy Samples as a hooker. And this was recently found by Alpha Blue Archives. And so it was a previously lost film. She's this hooker who teaches her young, like, 17-year-old daughter the ways of sex so she can also be a hooker, so she can sell her daughter. Mm-hmm. And it's the most whimsical and comical version of that really disgusting storyline that you could ever imagine. It is such a light and frothy fun, and it's softcore as well. It's not hardcore. So it's fun, but when you read the description and when you say it out loud, it sounds truly revolting. But the movie is very cute. But I'm not sure if she actually shot that. I'm not sure where the Boris Lashensky credit came from.
Yeah, so the mix-up is whether or not she was under that Boris pseudonym. Is that the idea?
Yeah, I mean, it's very unusual for someone to be using that name, someone else to be using that name, but I don't see the connections to her shooting that in the crew, in the cast. I mean, that's the thing. I like to be able to connect the dots, and I'm not seeing any dots to connect with her shooting this, but that is, you know, it's another IMDb mystery where it's Boris Lashensky, so it makes sense. I just would like to be able to confirm. Yeah. I guess I should reach out to her.
I was gonna say, I think you need to make the dive.
Yeah, well, especially, I mean, thinking about how old she would be now, sooner than later, because I think, yeah, she must be in her late 70s, even maybe her early 80s now. Maybe her 80s, because I think she was a little older when she was in this, in Girl with Hungry Eyes.
Yeah.
Not Rotsler older, because, but,
If anybody can diplomatically make that connection, it would be you, Casey.
Yeah, I'll try. I'm generally... Yeah, I'm pretty... I don't know.
If it's
not
really her,
horn, but
are we sure it's her?
I am pretty good about that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, there are pictures.
Okay. I'm going to have
to... It's her face, for sure.
I'll have to look her up.
I think it might have been my friend... See, a lot of the stuff about Cathy and her career with Monroe was written about and documented now by a friend of mine named Finley Freeberg. He is a scholar that works in like a lot of the gay porn history. So he writes about like Pat Rocco and all these other people in LA specifically who are making gay porn. And so he found all these articles discussing Cathy Crowfoot being involved with making these short films and then working with Monroe. I think Finley might have found her. I'll have to reach out to him. I owe him a message anyway. But he might be the best person to do it. He would have a reason to, because he wants to know about Monroe Beeler. Yeah, like if
maybe that's where to
start. I'll talk about Bill Rotsler.
Yeah, maybe that's where to start.
Well, maybe I'm the person to write the Rotsler book. I say that having never finished my book. But somebody should be writing a Rotsler book, honestly.
There, baby, it's all right. It's all over. He won't bother you anymore.
But he's dead.
Hush, baby, it's all right. Don't worry. It'll be all right. Nobody'll ever know.
Oh, God!
Baby, it's all right. Don't worry. He's like all men. They all want the same thing. Just to use you. You're better off with me, kitty.
How about Adele Rein?
Miss Adele? I have some leads on where she might be.
Yeah.
Because I am probably the world's biggest fan of Common Law Cabin, the Russ Meyer movie. Yeah. I think I'm the only person that has given it 5 stars on Letterboxd. I think it is a perfect morsel of like 67 minutes, I think.
Yeah.
I love that movie to death. And I get really mad when people discuss it as lesser Meyer. I'm just like, you don't know what you're talking about. This movie is peak Meyer. It is so good. And it was shocking to me because I think when I was reviewing Girl with the Hungry Eyes when it first came out on DVD, I said, wait a minute. Vicky D is Adele Rein.
Yeah.
So then I went on IMDb and just changed I was like, oh, that's her. So for a long time, Adele Rein, it was just like, well, she made this one movie. She's very active.
Yeah. In
men's magazine shoots, in sexploitation. I don't think dancing, because if you've seen Common Law Cabin, not a dancer. But she, according to Jimmy McDonough in his Russ Meyer book, which is terrific, she was pregnant when she made Common Law Cabin.
Okay.
And that was around this, not long after, I think, this film.
Yeah, the thing with...
Which if we're going by Rotsler's story, I'm just like, that's not Rotsler's kid, right? Because she was married at the time. I'm hoping it wasn't Rotsler's kid. She made a few other things after that, but not too many.
Yeah, it's hard because she wears different wigs all the time, so it really does change her face when she wears these different wigs.
Right.
So, and she used different names, so it is hard to... Pre-internet for sure. Well, it's tough to track her.
Yes, and even her figure isn't something. It's not like an Ushi where you can tell Ushi from like the neck down because she does a lot of faceless stuff. Or like Sharon Kelly with a faceless role in Invasion of the Bee Girls, or like Michelle Angelo where she has very distinctive areolas. Not to be too clinical and gross, but yeah, Adele Rein, you can't even really identify her like physically. So you have to go by the face and hope that you can kind of figure that out. Or it's not even like Cathy where she has a very distinctive facial countenance. Yeah. So I was excited when it turns out that she did other films because, okay, good. Russ didn't like scare her out of the industry, you know?
She didn't do many. But
there's a lot of really... No. And it's, well, you know what else? And it's interesting because if you look at like a collection of her men's magazine's appearances, again, so many different wigs. And it's just like, you have to kind of hope that the photographer caught her at the right angle where it's very clearly her. Because I've seen photo shoots of her where I'm like, this isn't her. And then I turn the page and it's like, oh, the light caught her. This is her. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's very weird to be like that much of a chameleon in this particular industry.
Even the photo that they use like on IMDb and Letterboxd, it doesn't even look like how she looks in most of her movies. It's very strange.
No. Yeah, it's very, very strange. It's very strange.
But she's pretty good in this, I guess. I don't really have much to say about her. She's okay. Yeah.
I would like to know more about who dubbed her and who dubbed the actresses in this, because if Rotsler was able to use like a Hollywood actress to dub Pat Barrington in Agony of Love, I wish I could have asked him, okay, so who dubbed Tiger and Kitty in Girl with the Hungry Eyes? I don't know if that's really Cathy's voice. I know it's not Adele's voice because we've heard it in Common Law Cabin.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if I listened to the Jack Hill commentary for Mondo Keyhole, and I think that was Cathy's voice in Mondo Keyhole. So someone could, listen to those side by side and see if it's her voice.
Okay.
So give that a shot next time you're bored.
Well, I'll have to get a copy of that. I don't know when that Blu-ray's coming out.
Next July.
Oh, okay. So in like a month.
Yeah, I think it comes out next month. And I think that Jack Hill commentary is going to be an archival commentary on there. So if you haven't heard,
I'm glad they got it.
It's good. It's a good commentary. Yeah, he's very dismissive of the film, but he's entertaining, and there's a moderator on there that knows a lot about sexploitation.
Right. If you think about where his career was, he had done Spider Baby, and he was yet to do Pit Stop.
Yeah.
So he kind of just had to do this thing because Spider Baby basically vanished. And then I think Pit Stop was, that one didn't do well either. So it's very interesting. Yeah. I think it wasn't until he really fell in with like New World.
Yeah. Yeah, the moderator on that commentary with Jack, I forgot. It's Elijah Drenner who wrote American Grindhouse.
Oh, well, he directed American Grindhouse.
Yeah, he did that documentary.
Yeah. He does extras for Vinegar Syndrome. Yeah, he's been around for a long time.
Yeah, he knows his stuff.
Actually, Elijah Drenner is very good. Elijah Drenner, I'm glad they got him and somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, it's funny. He's like educating.
Jack Hill, when left to his own devices, is kind of tough sometimes.
He's like,
love him, but that's, he's best with the moderator.
Telling Jack Hill like what a rough he is. Jack Hill had no idea. It was funny.
That's when you know that Jack Hill was just like, I'm going to do my best on this movie, and I'm going to try to get Pit Stop made.
Yeah. I think he was,
it's just kind of like...
He was embarrassed.
It literally was...
About like all the rape
Pit Stop in his career.
The rape scenes in that movie. I think he wasn't, I don't know, he's just like, it's just what they told me to do. I had to put a rape scene every 5 minutes. And he's embarrassed that he appears. Which is so funny
because he made... Oh, I didn't know that.
Okay. Wow. I don't want to spoil this. I'm not going to tell the whole commentary. Just you'll listen to it eventually.
Yeah, well, I think that's very interesting, but considering that he made like Foxy Brown, where Pam Grier is not as great as she was in Coffee because she gets like assaulted and beaten up more than she does in Coffee. And then how much rape is in Big Dollhouse and Big Birdcage?
Yeah.
And Switchblade Sisters, what's her face is raped.
Yeah, so it's not like he never had another rape
Jack
scene.
Hill movies. Yeah, I'm like, there's Swinging Cheerleaders that had a rape scene too, didn't it? I feel like there's rape in a lot of. It's just, unfortunately, this is the nature of this genre. We're not saying we love it all, but it's just the way it is. Unfortunately.
Pat, will you come and swing your hips and lick your lips and show us what you can do? Come on, baby. Pat. Come on, Pat. That's really nice.
So Girl with the Hungry Eyes, the other notable thing that most people might know about it is Pat Barrington has a dance scene. And there are some Pat Barrington super fans for sure out there.
Yes. I mean, I'm not one of them, but I understand for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's a small part compared to Agony of Love, where she's the star. But she does, at the birthday party, she has a pretty lengthy I think she does, like 1 or 2 dances. But I don't know. I mean, they said that these were shot back to back. I don't know. Something about the way she's filmed in this one. She looks like she looks really skinny, like scary, kind of.
Well, he said that the money that she made from Agony of Love, she used to get a nose job.
Okay.
So there might have been something else that might have had some kind of impact on there. And that's why in the added scenes, she's wearing sunglasses and I think a different wig.
Okay.
So it's possible that that had some impact on if she just had surgery or whatever. I have no idea.
Could be.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that, really. One thing I always notice about her is how her implants look comfortable in some films and then really uncomfortable in other films. And kind of like there was another actress who they look like they're about to pop all the time.
Well,
Bambi Allen, I think. Yeah, the early days of implants are not good. She kind of has a better figure. She is a pioneer in whatever way, and at least she survived longer than Bambi Allen. Bambi Allen died very young because of her specifically because of her implants, because of toxic poisoning from those implants. But Renee Bond also, I think, not because of the implants, but yeah.
Those were Harry Novak purchased.
Yes, I think and then he claims she took it out in trade, which I think is very tacky of him to say, but that's Novak. So
yeah,
I don't really see her doing that, but I'm sure she might have done some work, some films for discounted prices or something to pay it off or something.
Sure. Yeah. So not much more to say about Pat Barrington's part here. Just she's kind of the instigator for the cat fight. She's a party favor, basically. I will say, though, that I think that's kind of the way she's used best in these films. I think she's a good dancer. She's visually stunning. I think when you ask her to do more, I think it's awkward. So like Orgy of the Dead, awkward. In Orgy of the Dead, she stays closed for most of it. So I'm like, why is she in this? They could have cast anybody in this. And then I reminded, oh, wait, she plays dual roles in that. I just remembered. So she does dance in that. I think, she's a good dancer. I think it's best when she's used as like a centerpiece of the film. Yeah.
It's not like an Ushi where I think Ushi could act if she could have fun with dialogue and had fun with, comic timing and stuff. So she was more than just, her cast.
Pat was someone you definitely had to dub. I think dubbing worked in her favor for sure.
I think I remember reading somebody interviewed like her partner after she had died. She died, before anyone I think could interview her. And he had said that she was upset because she kept reading reviews about her work that said she wasn't a good actress. And I'm just like, I don't know. Did anyone tell you were good? I mean, it's kind of like a Shauna Grant thing where Shauna Grant was really upset she didn't win Best Actress at like the AVN Awards. It's like, did someone tell you that you were? Yeah. Like, I don't know how delusional you have to be, but I understand why she has a fan following, because how could she? I mean, she's stunning. But I think it's best when even like in Sisters in Leather, another dance sequence. Yeah. And there's another one that she's in. There's a bunch of stuff she's in where it's just her dancing. Yeah. I'm like, this is great.
This is how
I could watch her dancing forever. This is what I want. Yeah. That makes me super happy because she's having fun. I love her in Mantis and Lace with Rotsler, like putting his hand on her stomach as she does the exotic dancing. I love her as that part of these films.
Yeah.
I think when you're making her a star of the movie, I think it's going to be a problem.
Which is funny that you say that, because I think you like Agony of Love better as a film, though, right? Which stars her or not?
No, I prefer this.
Okay. I'm the other way.
Well, it's interesting. I used to feel the opposite. I used to prefer Agony of Love because I think it's one of those situations where it's like, well, it's artistic and it's art. But I actually think Girl with Hungry Eyes is actually better made. And also, I like the script better, even though it is incredibly problematic from a viewpoint now.
Baby, don't you know that way is a dead end? You're a woman, and strange as it may seem, Tiger's a woman too. And as much as she wants to change that, she can't. Look, I can understand why a girl can get fed up with men pulling at her and all the eyes on you and everything. But that way is destructive, not constructive. It's death, not life. So maybe it isn't me or any other man you know right now. But, hun, you're a woman. And women were made for men, and vice versa.
I just have more fun with Girl with Hungry Eyes. I think Agony of Love is not something that I would put on to like have fun with. I think Girl with Hungry Eyes is something that I just enjoy spending time with this film. Agony of Love is something that I can watch and respect, but not fully love, you know.
Yeah.
I don't even think it's his best made film. I think that's Mantis and Lace. But and I'm probably alone in that because I know people who really hate that movie.
Yeah, I've seen that.
I love it. I don't care how boring, quote unquote boring people think it is. I could watch so much more of this.
It's funny that they would call it that boring. I mean, I wonder if they've seen The Girl with Hungry Eyes. They would probably think it's dreadful then because there are long.
There's a lot of padding in this.
Padding sequences.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I have so much. I have fun with it. I mean, and then it's kind of the nature of the genre. You have to. There are levels of padding, like you have Barry Mahon, where the whole movie's padding, or you have something like this, where you have Pat Barrington dancing. That's great padding. Yeah. And it's the same with Mantis and Lace. That's great padding. Like, as long as I think you're casting well, and it looks like it doesn't, as long as it doesn't have like a cynical bent to it, it's like, well, I have to let the camera roll because I need a 60-minute movie. If it feels like you're enjoying what you're shooting and that comes through, I think that's great.
Like even the Girl with Hungry Eyes near the end when Cathy's driving all over town, it's like it's fun to see the locations and it's fun to see Rotsler doing cool things with the camera. Like he's doing that low angle shot down by the tires, you know. That's not easy to do. Yeah. You know?
No, I think Girl with Hungry Eyes has a lot more, and I noted that when I revisited it for my like Novak marathon. I was like, oh, this actually is much more visually inventive than I remember. Like, there's a lot of really beautiful stuff in this movie. Shout out to Dwayne Avery, who only directed, I think he only directed 2 movies, but he shot a lot of stuff for like Rotsler and Novak, and he was generally really terrific. I think he was really good with like lighting, and especially when he moved over to color, he did really good color photography. But he's really good and inventive in both of these, but I give Hungry Eyes the edge because I think it's just more fun to look at for me.
But Rotsler did shoot a lot of his own stuff as well, right?
Eventually. Yes. Eventually he was able to move from just still photography to doing his own cinematography. I don't know if he shot that many though. I'm not sure. Recheck that.
Yeah, I'd have to look at the credits again because when I was watching his filmography, like he is credited as cinematographer on a couple of them, at least a couple of them.
Right. Well, I know for like the Chris Warfield stuff that he shot for like It Is. And then I think I think some of the other stuff became the movie Overexposed, which I think is also lost. I think he shot all of that stuff. And so not all of Mantis and Lace is Vilmos Sigmund. There's parts of it that are shot by Rotsler because not a lot of it, but some of it is footage that's brought over from the Like It Is shooting.
So yeah, where would you start if you were going to recommend a William Rotsler film?
Not The Godson. Mantis and Lace is the one that I rate the highest, but it's not exactly representative of his particular
because he didn't write that one
style of filmmaking because he didn't write it. It still feels like a Rotsler movie. I don't know. It also feels like a Vic Lance movie because of the music. It also feels like a Vilmos Zsigmond movie. Yeah, that's not as distinctive. That's probably his best movie.
Yeah.
I would probably tell him to start with Agony of Love, actually.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, actually, that DVD double feature from Something Weird is a very good introduction to both Rotsler and Novak.
Yeah,
I think that's a good intro disc and just the genre in general, because I think it kind of covers a lot of territory.
Yeah.
But across those 2 films.
Yeah, Agony of Love.
What about you?
Yeah, Agony.
Because you watched all of them, I think. At this point, you did a marathon.
Did my homework.
You were in Rotsler territory big time. Yeah, like what? Not necessarily the best, but I mean, what film would you recommend to start with, and what have you thought is the best of the ones you've watched?
I think I'm the same way. Yeah, I would Agony of Love. I'd start with because I think it's the best time capsule for late 60s. Rotsler. It's got some of that psychedelic stuff in it, with her like nightmare sequences. Right. And then, if you like that, go straight into Girl with the Hungry Eyes, because they do, they were made so close together. They share some talent. And then, but Mantis and Lace. Then go to Mantis and Lace because it's in color. And it's his most next to The Godson, it's his most mainstream picture, I'd say. Well, I haven't seen Hot Lead.
Yeah, I think so.
That's the only one I couldn't find.
I haven't either. I've had a copy of that for years. And that one's interesting because it's Vincent Wallace, who he had a relationship with, like, after she left films, I think. I think they were together for a few years in the early 70s. Vincent Wallace is a fascinating case anyway.
Yeah, so Hot Lead, I'd really like to see that. Yeah, 1969.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I have a copy of that. I'll see if I can send that to you.
Yes.
Because I think I've had it for years. I just never watched it.
Yeah, it's more like Lesbians sort of on the run or something. I'm not sure. So Godson is fun because it's, it's so clearly like, okay, Godfather's coming out. Let's do something related to it. But it's not at all. It's like not a Godfather movie at all. It's like...
Not even close.
Just like hanging out at a
They
brothel.
didn't even read the book.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, basically it is. It's just... And it's like... The pacing in that is so terrible. And I know he blames Pete Perry for that. And I'm just like, but you're credited on editing it, Bill. So how much? So I feel like he turned in the finished, edited, camera negative director's cut of it. And then Perry took the shears to it and cut it.
Yeah, that's what he said. That
if that's the case, then where did all the extra sex footage come from? Because those sex scenes go on forever. Yeah. So if Rotsler left that shit in, that's on Rotsler, and that's a pacing problem.
I don't know if they took the sex scenes out. From what I remember, the quote from Rotsler is like Pete Perry kind of like shuffled it around, so he re-edited it. So like that last, there's like a
so it didn't make sense.
There's like a sex scene near the end with that Lois Mitchell.
Lois Mitchell.
Yeah, and he said that he had originally cut that so like the mafia is like slowly inching their way towards the door while he's having sex with her.
Right.
So it's like cutting between the two, and he said Perry like took that all out, just made it a straight sex scene, and then they burst in at the end.
Right.
So stuff like that. But
yeah, I don't remember liking that scene either. I feel like I was not taken with Lois Mitchell, and they were trying to promote her as like this huge discovery.
I was taken.
I was absolutely not taken. I was like, wait, Ushi's in this, and you're making Lois Mitchell? You wasted Ushi in this, and you made Lois Mitchell the star. Even Maria Arnold, but I think she's very good in that as the drug addict.
Tiny. She's so short.
Yes, the little pipsqueak. She's like 4 or 5 or something, or 5 foot. She's 5 foot or something. Yeah. And Rita Chadwick is good in that. I mean, there's good stuff about that.
Yeah.
I think I gave it an historical rating on Letterboxd, just a 3.5 without the heart, which means like I'll give it its props, but I don't ever need to watch it again. I prefer Below the Belt on that DVD. I think Below the Belt is more fun.
I do want to shout out Like It Is. I actually liked it a lot more than I expected because it's kind of a pseudo documentary. Like I said, it does sound like he has real interviews with people in the counterculture that play underneath some real footage, some staged footage, and then there's just these long light show psychedelic scenes of dancing. But it's just like a total time warp, and it's a cool party film. That's what I said in my review is like, put this on when you have friends over in the background, and people will love it. It's just got awesome music, cool visuals, and give that one a look, people.
That was one that's kind of overlooked, I think. I think because it isn't necessarily a sex film, and it's not a drug film. It's like a mix of the two, sort of. And it's hard to market that to any particular audience now, because it's like if there's too much sex in it, then people are going to be turned off. If there's too much drugs in it, then people are like, "Where's the sex?"
Yeah.
So it's
it has it's like it has full frontal, but it's not really in a sexual context. It's like they're like dancing naked in their like shared hippie apartment. It's not sexual. So Like It Is, yeah, I enjoyed that one as a William Rotsler time capsule. And kind of like I said, like you could tell he's in the scene. This was he's not just making these films to capitalize on what's going on in the country and in California. Like he was there. He was in it.
And that's very rare in that era.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, you know what kind of reminds me of? Kind of reminds me of like Peter Fonda and Dennis Hopper doing Easy Rider. Where it's like they're very involved with the drug culture and the counterculture. So they're going to make this movie independently and it's going to be reflective of what they know, you know? And so it's like, and then everyone tried to do this and it didn't work because there was a lot of people that it became...
You can tell
commercial.
when they're not authentic with it or they don't have like, you know...
Or even like the Trip is like that, the Roger Corman movie. Or like Psych Out. Like a lot of the drug stuff around that time is made by people that you know are just square as hell. So they're not going to get this. Like, yeah, The Trip, I think Roger Corman's like, well, I did LSD once and I made this movie. It's like, that's great. Did you do it again? Did you do more? Well, did you have any other experiences?
How about Byron?
And Psych Out is just embarrassing.
Byron Mabe, did he do LSD, you think, so he could make Acid Eaters? I don't think so. I don't know.
No. Yeah, that movie is so square.
Yeah.
That's the best example I can think of people who clearly don't know what they're doing. And are just like, well, drugs are hip now, so let's make this. Like Dave Friedman, the squarest, the squarest World War II veteran. And he's just like, well, drugs are in. These, yeah. I hate that movie. Don't get me started on that. And I really passionately hate that movie.
I have seen some rumors and pictures floating around that might be coming out in a high def. So I'm gonna have to revisit that just because of the colors.
It looks great. It looks great, but it's just I don't want to sit through it again. It looks terrible. It's just a piece of shit. I really hate it. It's just a very cynical cash in on the counterculture. Yeah. And it's not even fun. It's not even enjoyable. At least Space Thing is fun. Space Thing is more fun than Acid Eaters.
Yeah. Any last?
I'm trying to think of anything else I need to say about Rotsler. Well, I think we talked about Adam Film World in a good, substantial way, but that was a situation where like he started Adam Film World as an offshoot of Adam Magazine for Night Publishing Company. And I have a ton of these. I don't have all of them yet because they're actually very expensive. He didn't start actually being credited by name in those until 1972, I think. So it took 6 years of him being involved with this magazine to finally start including his name in it. And then he kept going, I think, as a contributing editor, if not he wasn't the editor after a certain point, but he was a contributing editor. And I think he did that until at least the late 80s, maybe the early 90s. And that magazine is great. I actually just remembered that I had an issue with what they claim is an interview with Barbara Mills.
Okay.
And I read it and I was like, this is not an interview with Barbara Mills. Bill made this shit up again. It's saying that like, yeah, I had this husband and he left me and now he's dead. And I'm like, she was married to Frank at the time she was making these movies and they stayed together until she died. It's like, this is fake. So it's a mix of genuinely interesting stuff and just really complete hogwash of trying to like hoodwink sex film consumers.
But there's probably some great photos in there, right?
Absolutely. There's a lot of really good behind-the-scenes stuff, too. There's behind-the-scenes photos from the Godson in the issue about the Godson, where you can see him, like, on the set.
Oh, that'd be fun.
With some actresses. So that's fun. But yeah, Adam Film World is, like, super-duper valuable publication. And unfortunately, everyone knows it. That's why it's very tough to get certain issues for anything resembling a fair price. There's a really good issue of Adam Film World that's like a special called Girls Who Make Sex Movies, I think. And it interviews like Ushi and Naola Graff and Maria Arnold, Donna Stanley, Ruth Ann Lott, and Cindy Hopkins with Ron Darby. So they're interviewed together. I don't know if they were a couple at the time. And it's such a good interview. And I feel like a lot of it is genuine because he discusses interviewing like Ushi and Naola, and Kathy Hilton. I think he discusses interviewing them at his home, which I know to be true because they hung out at his house all the time. They socialized with him outside of these films all the time. So the Ushi interview is absolutely incredible because you get a sense of what an intellectual and what a really incredibly smart and engaging person she was. I absolutely recommend trying to find that somewhere on the internet. I paid quite a fortune for it. And now I don't.
But
even
you
have
said
it
some
in
of them have been digitized.
It's in storage,
or they're available online.
Some have been. I think some have been digitized. I think some might be in the Internet Archive.
Okay.
You might have to check on there, but that's a really good one because it's one of the few actual genuine interviews with Ushi at the time that she was doing films. Most of the rest you can tell there's a lot of tells in these interviews where we're like, well, that doesn't track just from basic knowledge of them now.
Yeah.
In the internet age. But whatever. Let me go back to Ushi, where she's very grounded and says she doesn't like parties and she likes reading science fiction and philosophy books.
I wonder if she read some of Rotsler's books. I'm sure he gave her some.
Oh, Ushi probably did, because she said she was a big sci-fi person. So I'm like, of course they connected on this level then.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, Ushi is super smart. We'll eventually do an episode all about her, but like...
And it'll be 5 hours long.
Yeah. Probably. I'll try to keep it short, but it's just kind of like, yeah, I mean, it's not just the fact that she was this visually stunning creature. Like, the reason why Rotsler kept in touch with her for so long is because she was actually interesting, and they had stuff to talk about. And it wasn't the fact that she was just gorgeous. I've heard that about Ushi from everybody. Yeah. That's why I'm disappointed that she wouldn't talk to Jimmy McDonough about working with Russ. I think that was the time to break her silence, and unfortunately, she didn't use that opportunity. But
well, I think the takeaway here is like William Rotsler was friends to all, and everybody seemed to get along with him and had connections in every industry, from modeling to writing to adult filmmaking. Like you said, we're just barely scratching the surface of Rotsler here, so hopefully this triggers some people to look into his life and his work and read his stuff. He was writing for magazines, writing books, and writing fiction, science fiction. So yeah,
and it's interesting just to encounter somebody who tried their hand in so much stuff and was apparently good at all.
Yeah, he was successful in a lot of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's unheard of. It's kind of like he didn't try something and then fail at it and try something else. He tried something, was good at it, and then was like, well, let me try something else just to see if I can do it. Or like, I want to do this and want to try it. And we haven't even talked about the cartoons.
Yeah.
And he was friends with like Sergio Aragonés from like Mad Magazine, and like that's a whole other thing. He was friends with all these other artists that did like commercial art and stuff. So it's also really rewarding to learn, kind of like with the Ushi thing, that somebody that you find like very attractive and that you like watching in films, it's like, oh, there's actually so much more to them. It actually makes them even more attractive.
Right, and he's generally seems like a good guy, more, from what we know.
He's not like a Novak.
Yeah, not like a Novak.
Who's kind of a sleazeball. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you, William Rotsler.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Wild Bill.
Those bulls are as predatory as any man.
I know that now, but it was like a vacation from men. But now it's like a nightmare. Oh, Ryan, the way they looked at me.
That's all right. Don't worry.